guys, this is Hannah. I am doing my first vignette on chapter 2 and I'm doing option 3. So chapter 2 focuses on the 4 patterns of practice, and I know all of you read it already, but just to review, the 4 patterns are literature focus units, literature circles, reading and writing workshops, and thematic units. In the book, it says that the best practice is to try and incorporate more than one pattern of practice into your daily instruction because it adds variety and it offers a lot of different strategies and skill sets for the kids to keep working on. Of course, this does depend on the time and resources that are available for your classroom and also the dynamic of your class. So it depends on those things as well, which one of these patterns will work best for you. So the vignette in chapter 2 focuses on Mrs. Miller-McComb's 6th grade class. And we're going to see that Mrs. Miller-McComb incorporates almost all of the strategies into her daily practice. And we're going to go into that in a little more depth in the next couple of slides. So the first pattern of practice that we see Mrs. Miller-McComb using in her classroom is the literature focus units. So the components of this are reading, responding, mini lessons, and creating projects. So reading is pretty self-explanatory. The teacher often reads a book to the whole group or small groups, depending on what skills they might be working on and strategies. So they introduce the text and they read it, and then they reread it and keep going with the reading process. The next thing is reflecting on the text as they read. So the students will discuss what's going on, they will bring up their ideas, and this helps with comprehension and retaining the information, and also promotes critical thinking skills in the kids. And then the teachers for mini lessons can introduce or reinforce skills and strategies that are needed to be successful readers, and this can be done in a whole or small group setting. And then finally, oftentimes teachers will have their students create projects that are focused on whatever novel they are reading. So this is a really good way to authentically observe and assess student understanding. So it's really great, and they can also incorporate visual and written pieces as well. So Mrs. Miller-McComb uses these strategies. She's currently reading the book Tuck Everlasting to the whole class, and by reading it out loud to the students, she is able to kind of guide their thinking and also model how to read fluently and with emotion and inflection. And then the students reflect by having discussions, especially when they're prompted by the teacher. So she'll read maybe a paragraph or two, and then she will ask the students a question that requires them to make predictions and use context to come up with their ideas. And then she also has the students write in reading logs for 5 minutes, and then they share their responses. And finally, Mrs. Miller-McComb uses this novel to teach about story structure and plot, and she's also teaching about suffixes using a word from the book. So she's doing mini lessons throughout this whole time. Another pattern of practice that Mrs. Miller-McComb is using in her classroom is literature circles, and she calls them book clubs, which I think is a really fun idea, to have your own little book clubs. So the components of a literature circle are reading. So the teacher often offers book options to each group of students, and the students get to choose the book that they'd like to read. So this is a really student-driven approach because they have a lot of say in what they'd like to read. And then there's responding, where the students meet as a group after reading independently and they reflect on the book. They can also sometimes take on different roles to help guide their discussions. So one of them will be a word wizard, so they bring up important words and new vocabulary that they think are important. Sometimes there's like a leader in the group who will lead the questions. So the students really have a lot of responsibility in this part of this practice. And finally, the students share and they get to meet as a whole group, and the different groups get to share the books they've been reading, and oftentimes they will present a project that they've created. So Mrs. McComb is using this. She has about 7 book clubs currently, and the range of reading is 4th to 8th grade. So she has a really wide range, and it's a really great part of this literature circle is that all the students work at their own pace and work within their own level. So none of them are being pressured to read a book that's too advanced for them, and no one's, reading a book that they could read in one day. And the students do get to choose their own novels from a selection, and oftentimes they'll read like a series of novels. And then the students do have conferences with the teacher, and they also hold group discussions to compare and contrast their thoughts. So that's their responding part of that. And then finally, Mrs. Miller-McComb has each group of students create a visual display to put on a bulletin board. And this display needs to center on their book and any specific parts of the story they're learning about, or different skills and strategies that they've been focusing on. So that's the sharing part of this. Finally, another aspect of the patterns of practice that we see in this vignette is the writing workshop. The components of the writing workshop obviously are writing, where the students spend about 30 to 45 minutes on their own projects, moving at their own pace. So a lot of the times the students will get to choose a topic that they want to write about. The teachers might prompt them if they're having a hard time coming up with something, but the teachers really kind of give them the reins on this, and they're able to pick a topic that makes them interested, so they're more motivated. Also, mini lessons are a part of the writing workshop. This is often a 15 to 30 minute period where the teacher is going to take the time to present lessons that focus on skills and strategies, as well as literary concepts. And finally, sharing is a big part of the writing workshop. So the students get to complete their share their completed work in the author's chair. So this really allows them to be proud of what they've created and also reflect on what they've done and see what other students are writing about. And so Mrs. Miller-McComb has students write independently for 40 minutes every day on a topic that they have chosen. So this is really great that she has the time of the day to devote the 40 minutes to writing. And sometimes she'll have them write based on a thematic unit that she is going over. For example, they're going to be doing an Egyptian unit, so their writing is focused on that. But this week, for mini lessons, Mrs. Miller-McComb is working on teaching students how to identify and create narrative leads. So that's like the hook that catches the attention of the reader. And she also has time to do individual conferences with each student to discuss their work and make suggestions. And this is where she's often taking down notes, making some observations, tracking their progress. So that's really where she's gathering some data and collecting information. And finally, a big part, like I said, is sharing. So the students in Mrs. Miller-McComb's class, once they've created and published their work, which means they've typed it and then handed it in, can sit in the author's chair and just present what they've done. And in the book, it said that oftentimes this is more of a celebration of their work and their dedication to the writing. So at this point, there's really not any more feedback from the teacher or other students. This is just all about letting that child really kind of revel in their own success. So those are the three of the 4 patterns of practice that are seen in Mrs. Miller-McComb's class, and that again was found in chapter 2. Thank you very much.